dear subscribers and all the new people on my channel. Well, this is still showing me 0 viewers at the moment. I'll wait a little bit and just chill for a second. So I made a small poll picking 3 subjects that I would personally like to talk about, and I was contemplating on some of them for a while. Let's say, I guess when it comes a little bit to trauma, at least from my own personal perspective as well and stuff, I have been speaking quite a bit about it before. It's maybe more from like a documenting perspective as well. There's kind of quite a bit of stuff that I have to go and watch back, let's say a year ago, because it would be very significant to see how I was expressing myself and what I was really talking about back then. But while I'm still waiting on others to join, the PTSD and the CPTSD, or complex trauma. So what's the big difference? So with PTSD, and it's not something that, let's say, only soldiers who go to war and people who may experience extreme violence would be suffering from PTSD, but the general rule of the PTSD is that you can have a normal, loving, healthy life. Everything in your life can be great. And then sudden event happens, whether it's a loss of a loved one, it could be some personal trauma happening to you, it could be many things can happen that basically create a traumatizing experience. And the PTSD in itself is obviously when you get triggered. And triggered doesn't mean that you get triggered by comments on internet and triggered by people, but triggers can be in many ways and sorts. Either you are passing through a neighborhood that reminds you, or you're maybe there's a song on the radio that reminds you of that specific event or that specific person. Hello, dear viewer. Kind of already started on my own anyway, but I was just discussing and started the discussion into what's the difference between PTSD and then CPTSD, or complex trauma. And I was in the middle of explaining that PTSD is not just common to soldiers and people who have been through serious violent events, but it could be just a simple things such as accidents and maybe some other traumatic experiences. The PTSD, generally the rule of the thumb is that a lot of people can suffer from PTSD regardless of the fact whether they had any childhood trauma or not, whether they had normal life, so to speak, in the past, and then certain event happens that traumatizes them, and then later on, what the triggers can be, it can be music, it can be passing through a place where something happened, it can be meeting certain people, talking about certain stuff. So there are many triggers, not just the triggers that we know from internet and people being rude to each other, right? So PTSD generally can happen to anyone. It can happen for many reasons, and it can happen anytime in life, with the fact that the event itself has to be traumatic for the person. Now, regardless of whether somebody is drowning, this is a good analogy I found once. If somebody is drowning in a couple of inches of water or 10 feet of water, the fact is that these two people are both drowning. So how much trauma has someone experienced compared to another person is really irrelevant for both of these two people, because their bodies will react and act in the same way. Now, the CPTSD is something that I'd like to focus more on today. Undertaker. Yeah, I like my little light that reminds of the candles. So CPTSD is different. CPTSD is something that is basically an ongoing traumatic experiences, and CPTSD is something that most often starts early in the childhood. Triggers. I don't know. For example, when I had Saturn, for now it seems okay. I mean, I don't have any problematic people. So, but if it turns out that I get any trolls and stuff, yeah, I'll ask any nice people here to moderate for me. So the PTSD triggers are triggers in general. What happens on triggers? You have a, let's say, you just basically get a more vivid memory, more emotional memory of that event or something in the childhood, depending on like what kind of it. For example, in my case, in CPTSD, I could be talking to a person and they are sharing their life experience, and it immediately starts reminding me of the experiences I had as a child or in the past and all this kind of stuff. So it's very often difficult to quiet the mind when you have a lot of triggers around you. So that's, for example, it's not like that every trigger has to be triggering emotional responses or rage or stuff, but you know, it's different things, let's say. But triggers are also when triggers are actually people around you, and if they are pushing your buttons, then it's also from screaming to swearing to God knows what. Basically your brain shuts down, and this is something I want to explain to people why a lot of people who are suffering from PTSD or CPTSD, the complex trauma, tend to be very reactive, tend to be very emotional, tend to be very sensitive, because this is really a part of the neurological condition. So there are psychological traits and psychological conditions, but then there's the neurological brain damage that most people suffer from. And it is also curable. So that is also the fact. The brain is plastic, and anything that related to our neurology and the brain can be healed, can be overcome, can be, you know, the same way people who have a disability can adapt their life to living with that disability the same way people like myself and other neurodivergent and neurospicy people of all kinds learn to live with themselves. So basically it's all about knowing yourself really good, knowing your boundaries. Hello Brittany, and thanks for your subscription. What's my time is now 8:30, so it's Central European summertime, Amsterdam. Am I a professor? No. I was really passionate about psychology very early, but because of the nature of my stuff and environment and where I lived, I was studying computer science and telecommunications later on. But I'm super curious and always really learn everything that neuroscience and psychology are discovering. So I'm, you know, according to some of the people who are experts in this field, I'm very, very competent. So all I would be missing is a diploma, but that personally doesn't matter to me, because it's all a matter of discussions, and I'm just being honest and open about my experience and also what I've learned from it. Because obviously if you want to learn stuff about this, you need to read, you need to watch videos, you need to learn from experts themselves. Opinion on 6 million. 6 million of what? I'm not sure if I can understand the question there, sorry. I used to work in tech. I was, let's say, my highest level in the career was a technical lead in the broadcast industry. So, very big corporate company. And I worked most of my time in the video broadcast engineering and stuff like that. But yes, at the end of 2019, I quit for two reasons. One of them was moral stance, and the other one that I needed more time for myself and the family and stuff. So I was going to launch my business, but 2020 was bad timing. So yeah, that's kind of the stuff. Then yeah, so CPTSD compared to PTSD, as I explained before, this is CPTSD is something that basically you live with, and why you would think, let's say, a lot of people who may have had childhood trauma and all of these things, people would say, yeah, but why don't you do anything to change your life? Why don't you do anything to, to make it better? For the most part, when we're growing up, for the first, obviously, for 14, 20 to 25 years, we do grow up without a lot of guidance. I mean, most of people like myself most likely had parents that were neglectful, maybe alcoholic, maybe there was a drug addiction problem, other things like that. So the catch is that you end up looking after yourself a lot and you try to learn to survive purely on your own basic survival instincts. And this is really weird for us human beings, because what are our survival instincts? And you would think stuff like empathy and hypersensitivity, and then a lot of these ADHD symptoms that would also be overlapping in the PTSD and CPTSD. The catch is that it becomes your self-defense mechanism. So let's say lack of sleep is very common. Just basically falling to sleep, because this is the time when you are finally feeling relaxed, and if you're in a safe space, your brain starts buzzing and processing all the emotions that you were just subconsciously suppressing and not facing before. So that's, I remember not just days but years of nights where stuff would just keep coming around without any sort of triggers, for example. So why does stuff become complex trauma even when you have, let's say, a perfectly peaceful and a normal life? Because everything starts kind of rushing and catching up with you. So I remember when I was about 14, 15, I started, when we moved away from my father, and there was like a new level of safety and less of uncertainty for me, then all of the memories from the first 14 years started rushing up, and it was just impossible to do anything about it until everything was sort of processed by itself. But this was an automated thing that I wasn't so aware of as I am now. Now it's a lot more conscious work with all this stuff. You see a trigger, you hold yourself not back, but you hold yourself accountable to keep peace with yourself and with anything. And it's never gonna be perfect. I still often get pissed off, so to say. I can react in a loud manner, depending on what's the situation and what kind of person I'm interacting with. But I don't hold myself in a need to have to smile and show myself at the nicest possible manner at people who are themselves very aggressive and abusive, and they don't understand how difficult it is to manage that boiling up point inside of a person like myself, because those people generally are the biggest trigger for anything that comes, and it comes in a much more physical response, and emotions and physical responses are really well connected. So that's why also PTSD and complex trauma causes neurological conditions. So I don't want to say neurological damage, because damage sounds like something broken and you just can't fix it or you can't do anything about it. But as I said already earlier, the brain is plastic, so anything can be healed and managed. But the way this works, it's like when you're in the survival mode, your brain switches into survival mode. Most of the oxygen, most of the energy, most of everything you have for that moment will go straight down to the survival parts of the brain, and it will, so that means your more logical thinking, your problem solving skills, your other stuff, the focus and all of these things is really kind of switched off or on a very bare minimum. So for me it was really surprising, even to myself now, how highly functional I was in the tech industry, for my career, in the society and all this stuff. And only later on I've learned how much of this was really just masking on, and not masking from other people, because I've always been really honest with myself and to others, but masking my own emotions from myself, my own relationship, for example, the intimate relationship, which turned out to be an extreme trigger and very traumatic for me then later itself. So it's all in all kept adding and adding, and I just kept myself distracted and busy. And I didn't know that actually I'm functioning on an autopilot. And that's why a lot of my reactions to the abuse I was going through in the past few years was just very, very self-defensive, totally unrational. Like, even though I was controlled, but I was still angry. I was still very defensive. I still felt like basically like a victim, nowhere to go, and all this stuff. And that was just continuously spiraling me into this dark, self sabotaging loophole. And this is why I'm saying this, because a lot of people tend to be extremely judgmental when it comes to situations like that. Even in a simple situations such as somebody driving a car really recklessly, or texting and driving, and they tend to hit you on a bike or something, maybe close enough to causing an accident. Personally, it makes me jump. Not like jump on a person, but it makes me jump, because at that point, I'm also really concerned about this driver, about this unconscious, half blind person being a danger to others in the traffic. So it's like this hyperactive, hypersensitive, hyper empathetic mind immediately kicks in. And it's really, really difficult not to say to that person, can you please be more careful? Can you please do something, because you're not alone? That's my usual response to them. But then again, you have people who tell you, I don't know, get the F out of my country, or stuff like that. And, you know, sometimes I'll just shrug it off, and sometimes it will make me really want to kick their butts. And I think most of these people do deserve their butts to be kicked, because they are a danger to others. And then when they look at people like myself, just calling them out on their bullshit with our serious face, and they feel threatened and victimized. And that is the problem, because we're always putting people who clearly have maybe problems with themselves, we're putting them down as if they are a threat. Simple example. I saw a homeless guy running down the streets. You know his life is already in shambles. And he's trying to catch that plastic bottle during the middle of the day, so nobody is really paying any sort of attention to him. And he's totally aware of that neglect. So he doesn't care about anyone anymore other than himself and that plastic bottle he's chasing. I stopped it for him, and he yelled at me. He said, "Step on it and I will kill you." And I was, pretty taken aback by that reaction, but immediate compassion for him, for a person who is just in a similar situation than myself, was, "Brother, please tell me, why are you so angry today?" And when he said to me that he's just hungry, I honestly didn't care how much cash I've got left in my pocket. I decided to take him to one of the better shops there. It was not it's like an eco fast food restaurant. So I took him there, bought him the soup, bought him a sandwich, and I asked him if he allows me to give him a hug, because clearly that person, because of his high cortisol levels and his brain being completely shut off, all they needed was just a human touch and a human hug. And that's also the science. Stress levels and survival mode just increases cortisol, and cortisol shuts down the brain. It starts deteriorating the muscles. It starts basically making your whole body feel fatigued and sick and powerless. And what helps? What is the best cure? What is the best medicine for that? You wouldn't believe it. It's human touch. It's a human hug. Why? Because opposite hormone of the cortisol is oxytocin. And oxytocin releases best when we're basically hugging each other. And thanks God, a lot of people who I've met recently in the past 6 months or so have been the kind of people who understand this, and they don't mind giving you a hug or just at least a tap on the shoulder. And you wouldn't believe how literally on a physical scale how that goes up on the spine and into the brain, and it just makes you feel like, to me it makes me feel like a little puppy. What else a human? So that level of acceptance and human love changes literally chemically. I feel how it chemically affects and changes my brain structure to something much better and something that I want to be and how I want to feel. And this is how basically we are really overlooking the facts that very often with our own dynamics, with our own little judgments, we're actually further traumatizing people who are already traumatized and are already suffering from complex trauma, where all we need is tiny bit of compassion. It really doesn't cost much to give person a hug and one little moment of kindness, and that's all. Hello, Ronditz. So, yeah, I think I've gone pretty quick through all the, if somebody looked at the description, how to heal all this stuff and all how to deal with these things. Complex trauma is also something that people who are experiencing, I would like to note to everyone watching this and going through these similar problems, when people tell you that you're being selfish, narcissistic even maybe. I mean, there's so many overlapping spectrums on the complex B personality disorders you are going probably to be able to find yourself with. For example, I could have easily in my 20s ticked every single check on the borderline personality disorder, which is very close to the narcissistic, but you're not exactly the person who wants to see other people hurt. Just sometimes you are very reckless and careless about yourself more than others, but that means that you might put others in a unsafe situation or something stupid. So, but I think that's also part of growing up and being young, and you know, maybe a male as well. I think more males are inclined to be the borderline than the females, who tend to be more self-centered and narcissistic because of their slightly inclined more emotional pain that they carry around than we do. So that's also something interesting to note. And it's I've actually suffered from my own self-shaming and guilt as a father and as a parent and all of these things, because we all make mistakes. Like kids can make you angry and you're gonna raise your voice and you do feel like shit afterwards. And you go and apologize and all this stuff. And that's processing that shame and guilt in the correct way. But then you might have a tough argument with your partner, and your partner is, let's say, in my case, not one or friends even that I had, some people I considered friends, who were just basically proper toxic people. And instead of asserting that boundary and rationalizing stuff and being able to actually process your emotions correctly, you take up on yourself what these people tell you and what they project on you, and you start like, I'm such a bad person, I'm such a, you know, like I'm too sensitive, I'm blah blah blah, I'm yelling too much, I'm whatever. I mean, it's the fact that even though we, people like myself and people with PTSD, people with ADHD and whatever it is like that, we're the neurodivergents, and then the neurotypical people, which I'm not sure why these terms are even useful for anyone, because in terms of simplicity, what does the neurodivergent mean for the simple people, and what is the neurotypical? It just means like a normal person and whatever others consider not normal. But the point is, I think where it's like that, it's just people who have a more healthy personal and interpersonal relationship dynamic. That's what it is, I would say, normal. And again, we're all thinking that this is some kind of perfectionism at play, and it's far from it, because even really healthy families are healthy and they look perfect to us because they probably have a structure and a system of how to work through their tough moments, because we all have them. And that's the difference. So stop thinking there's something wrong with you. Stop thinking you're broken. Stop thinking that you have to fix necessarily stuff, because if you can fix it, then do it. But if you can't fix it, then take a crutch and start walking with the crutch through your life, whatever it is. Stop feeling shame of whatever the difference and the disability, whatever you want to put this on, is. If you're different, you're different. We all are. But there is a lot of beauty in that chaos and the mess and the stuff that comes out of your neurodivergent brain. For me, I've only figured out that people who can vividly imagine stuff inside their minds are actually like, this is kind of normal for most of the people. It blew my mind away that I close my eyes and I can't see shit, I can't hear a sound, and I can't imagine a smell. And I didn't know this was normal. I thought that for everyone was normal, that when you close your eyes, all you see is dark, but you know how stuff should look like. Because my different type of imagination is pretty wild. I have no problem of knowing what should be inside my mind's eye, but I don't see clear pictures voluntarily. Hey, Starbright, good to see you here, and good to have you again on my stream. Yeah, I think the hardest things for any of us who already had childhood trauma and stuff are definitely, it's like living the toxic relationship is not a problem, but being in a toxic relationship with kids and stuff, I don't know, that for me was really extreme. I still can't process all the emotions because it's so hard. That fear of what will happen to them, and how they're gonna be processing all that stuff, and what kind of lies they're gonna be told. Because let's say my 16-year-old kid, when he could finally speak for himself and he told me, look, this is what they said about you, this is how they speak about you and stuff, and I'm like, look, I can't tell you myself what you need to believe, or me or them or whatever, but you're gonna be staying here with me, and let's go through this stuff, and I'll answer your questions as honest and as an objective as I can be. And then you observe me, my words, my actions, and the rest. And you should make up your own opinion and image of myself. Yeah, well, it didn't take long for this kid to go back and tell his mother that he was fed up with a ton of lies he heard. So yes, it's difficult. That is, I wasn't traumatized because I'm selfish and ego-centered about my pain, but predominantly when that social worker said in my face, you don't know how abuse affects little children. And I just looked at her with complete disbelief what I'm hearing and what kind of person and what kind of professional role they have that I'm hearing that from. And of course, these same people turned out to be the same people who have now on at least 2 occasions accused me of stuff that is completely false and stupid. Oh yeah, be the best version. I wanna recoin that one, and I'm not the first. It's very, sometimes this puts a pressure on ourselves, or I would say anyone. This is regardless of whether you have any traumatic issues or not. Be just better. Like, I would like to be better every day than I was yesterday. And even that doesn't have to be a mission, because the way, again, if you're really, really down, like you're not depression and stuff. I was at a point of like, I wanted to die. And that is the lowest point you can hit. Like rock bottom is not rock bottom. When you understand that you can spend a lot of time completely alone in the dark, processing your deepest and most painful traumas from the childhood, maybe even birth itself, and you still don't have that hug and that medicine you need, which is basically just a human, that in itself is, I think, really, really hard to process. But if you go through that shit, just know that waking up the next morning is already an achievement and you're doing really well. I congratulate you for getting through another day, through another night, through whatever has been, because I have almost given up on several times last year. And not like wanting to hurt myself or end it, but emotionally I saw no hope and no exit anymore. There's quite a few like this, not so nice videos I posted and created with some templates and stuff. That's exactly how it feels. I came back from hell. And when I was able to just sit up on the bed and maybe, I don't know, even just binge watch stupid videos all day, at least I didn't feel like I want to disappear anymore. So it started day by day, day by day. And at some point, with a little help of psychedelics as well, I came to this conclusion, not the conclusion, but there was this literal image that flipped in my head when I finally saw, and this is really important for every one of you who had a relationship with abusive people, with narcissists, with borderline personalities, and stuff like that. What really helped me was to finally see that everything best I saw in them and also other people, because I was always introjecting and seeing the best in all other people, and this empathy that was basically just trying to protect me from their own dark side, I realized that the person and that reflection that I loved in them was actually me. And at that moment, instantly I fell in love with myself. And not that, ooh, selfish love about, oh, look at my pretty face and all that crap. No, man. That not. But that love when I'm like, oh, look at this big heart. And look at that beautiful soul, so full of colors and so full of everything. And that's how you should be falling in love with yourself, with what's really inside you, because only you know what you have been through. You know your worth and you know what you have given to people, regardless of how freaking hard they were stomping on you, treating you like a piece of shit and whatnot. At the end of the day, what I've learned from the bullies in my childhood, it's not the bullies that were actually the ones that had to live with what they've done, because they were still, some of them were able to come forth, apologize, and actually own their mistakes. Great. The people who stood by and did nothing, they actually cried the most. They were the people that also did give me the biggest impression already in the childhood, because they are in the majority. And these people are the ones who I hope some of them are gonna continue to watch replay of this and stuff later on, all the way to the end, until this point and maybe later, are actually, in my opinion, the number one abusive kinds of people. Because they turn a blind eye, and on the other hand, they go and, I don't know, donate some money to the hungry children in Africa. I do that too. But the whole point is like, they're ignoring child abuse in their neighborhoods, right next door. They're ignoring domestic abuse in their neighborhoods, right next door. And when they do something, it's all they do is maybe call the police. Which is, I think, in my opinion, in 90% of the cases, it doesn't end well for either the person who is the victim or the abuser, because the abuser, especially male, will end up in prison most likely, and the victim will have a bunch of flying monkeys suddenly around them, if that's a female, supporting their own victim mentality. Either way, neither are getting the right help. But when it comes to people that pretend to be normal and everything is normal and all this kind of stuff, ignorance is not bliss. Because the more we pretend something is not happening and the more we're basically saying, oh, it's just their own crazy problems, the more we are encouraging victim shaming, blaming, and neglect. And imagine that these were your children that somebody else doesn't give a damn about when they are suffering. I hope that gives you enough of a perspective how that feels for everyone else. Because what is a traumatized person? It's basically just a broken child in an adult body. And that child needs just a lot of love and a lot of reparenting and a lot of support to be able to understand that the world is not against them. That's so simple. And I'm not sure if there's anything else I didn't manage to cover for tonight that I meant in terms of, yeah, what do we all owe to ourselves about healing with the trauma and stuff. So one of the last things I left in the description was the lone wolf mentality, which I also had a lot, which is this: I can do everything alone, I'm totally independent, and who gives a shit about others. It's definitely a very great stoicism approach, and I think myself I'm quite stoic. But this is a difference between a Marcus Aurelius stoicism, which is more about community and all of that kind of stuff and support in many different levels, and then strength when it comes in numbers as well. Whereas standing alone and suffering, that is a bit of a different thing. Because, yeah, you can probably do, like myself, I'm really talented, I'm handy, I'm all this kind of stuff. I can do almost anything I want alone, and if I can't do it, I will learn. Lone wolf. That's great. But can a lone wolf fix their own brain damage when it comes to trauma and CPTSD and all of this stuff? No way. You might learn to live with that stuff, and you will become really strong, you will become very, self-dependent, really self-sufficient. But on the other hand, remember, you will become also extremely rigid. We're social creatures. It's not necessary that you need a partner, it's not necessary that you need to spend all your life living with people. That's not what I'm talking about. But don't forget that we're all social creatures. A lone wolf comes back to the pack when the pack needs the wolf for protection, that's one. And the lone wolf returns to the pack when the wolf is wounded or old, and then the pack is needed so the wolf can heal or die gracefully. So all these traumatized lone wolves and ninjas and whatnot, trust me, I'm speaking with you, to you, from me. You're hurting yourself, you're sabotaging yourself. There's still the part of that healing and the part of you waking up from that traumatic and auto-responsive and survival mode type, and actually really learn how to enjoy life. What we need to learn is how to love, how to have fun, how to relax, how to be happy. That's what you need to learn instead of survival mode. And for that, you need friends. For that, you need people who are gonna be close to you. For that, you also need intimacy and all of that stuff. So stop blaming and shaming yourself with the perceived lone wolf mentality, because what you're doing at the end of the day is running away from the people that might actually open a completely new perspective to you about life and the beauty of it in itself. Because that's what we really need to do. Nobody needs necessarily pills, and I don't know, therapy helps, but therapy is only giving you another perspective. Therapists don't do anything for you. Pills don't do anything for you. They only make things worse because they are trying to mask and hide and minimize the symptoms, but they don't address the root cause of those symptoms. And to be honest, with my experience, most of the therapists are just too freaking outdated, slow, and inside their book mindset to even comprehend how many different spectrums of attachments and traumas and whatnot and people's experiences there are. And you can't approach everyone with the same type of healing. Some is gonna be, for some, it's better to talk. For some, it's better to walk in the woods. I don't know, whatever it is. And not to mention, I mean, something that to this day I'm surprised that is being so suppressed is medical research based on what people call recreational drugs. And they're not. Show some respect. They are it's therapeutic medicine in many ways when it comes to psilocybin, when it comes to psychedelics in general. And then you also have many experiments and trials and research done even with ketamine and MDMA and stuff like that. Now, again, I'm just saying, I'm not pointing this out to be the only way, but it's in many cases very fast, really helpful, and then the rest of the therapies like somatic, ERDM and stuff, because sometimes all people need is a bit of a push and the brain opens up. And these things, because I did have experience with them, they help. It's not, for example, in my case, LSD is not a recreational drug. Even if you take it and go out in a party, you might end up having a very spiritual experience, or I don't know, maybe something else. But it's not something I would tell people go and do acid on a party, because no, especially if you have trouble. But if you have issues and you really have trouble processing some of the deep stuck emotions which are so subconscious, yeah, why not? But don't do it alone, and don't do it without any proper supervision and someone who knows what they're doing. Preferably maybe an expert who knows what they're doing. So, yeah. I even had a therapist. So with my partner, we had a couple therapists, not efficient, unfortunately. And then we split. So we finally got a male to join us, but we started splitting anyway. So I was continuing my own therapy with the male guy. And he has an extreme amount of experience with guys in a situation like me, but still seems like that these people just don't know how to tell you straight up in your face. Because for someone, neurodivergent, complex trauma, overthinking, ADHD, this is such a standard thing. It's not diagnosis, it's just a part of the symptoms that we all have, like us. And you need to tell us in our face, have you considered that you're being abused so and so, and emotionally abused and da da da? If I was so out of touch with my own emotions and myself that I practically lost my identity throughout the years of living with such a partner, it's your damn job as a therapist to actually be a bit more brutally honest with people. And that's what I like about those therapists, which are and good listeners, but also very good in giving you exactly the kind of perspective you need to bloody wake up. Because self-love cannot wait. That's something that is the first seed that people need to be planted with. Realizing perspective they have with their own introjections and projections onto their abusers. That's good. It's good to have respect from the therapist in a sense that they Also see if you need to be told, not dragged through weeks and months of pointless talking and analysis. Just go straight to the point. If you see an issue, name an issue. Identifying our demons helps us expel them. That's so simple. It's not biblical. This is really just in Bible. This is a very good explanation for. If you consider most of the demons in people, most of the possessions and obsessions are basically just disorders, mental health disorders, and all of these kind of things. Even church itself does recognize the difference between an actual spiritual and weird possession and then mental health illness, and they can cure both. And what do they use to cure psychological one? Well, yeah, of course, psychology, just much more efficient than most of the therapists. I've seen a couple of these people at work, and it's amazing. Well, look, my wife is also hurt herself. She was hurt by her parents a lot. She was hurt, betrayed, and like everyone's suffering. So yeah, she hurt me a lot, but what can I do? I mean, it's not my fault other than I didn't follow my own standards and my intuition. That's definitely something I had to really learn. And even though I was very good at it before, but I had the weakness for women who needed help. um, yeah, it sounds bad. Hurt people, yeah. And it's like as if, let's say, when I hurt someone, even when I hurt her, once I hurt her when I was drunk myself, like when I was reacting too aggressively. Other things were like, yeah, me basically running away from her violence, but in a sense. Um, so, do people like that? Do I want to hurt someone? Yeah, if you're a really, really bad motherfucker, then I probably want to hurt you, but not like with pleasure. But if there's really no better solution for that stuff and I'm capable, then yeah, run. But there's people like this is the difference between the intent. So let's say in a relationship dynamic, the problem with the narcissists is that they will find so many ways to justify their behavior, to put themselves on the pedestal and protect their fragility in a sense, their stuff they're hiding, and the lies and the cheating and all this stuff, because um, and at the end, seeing some of the things from their perspective myself, it's like the amount of shame and guilt that they feel really deeply inside. Oh, it's beyond like someone like myself when I was just like more like the victim role. This is the codependency and empaths. We really feel victimized. We know that we are being dehumanized, but then people will tell us, yeah, you're playing a victim role, you're doing this, you're doing that, and this, you know, an overt narcissist will definitely you will hear it from them first that, oh, you're being so narcissistic. I didn't even know what that means until I went like, okay, if you want to tell me that, I'm gonna read, because I was concerned. At the end of the day, a lot of this survival mode was really self-centered. At the end of the day, I definitely cared about what the kids are feeling, what she's feeling, and what she's going through, and all this kind of stuff. But at some point, when you're being pushed around to over your limits, you care about your own self just a tiny bit more than about everyone else. So you're still caring about others, but you tell them, let's say, from my perspective, you tell them, you know what, I've had enough of your problems and enough of your nagging and all of that stuff. I need a break. I need to rest. I need to get some fresh air. I need to do whatever it is. And in my case, things were going on for so long and so complex that that break is still ongoing. Like I need proper vacation with massages and whatnot, and some somatic therapies and stuff to actually just recover physically, because my body is literally, it's like being beaten, but beaten for a long time. Like muscles hurt, everything hurts. It's hard to move. It's hard to continue to exercise every day, for example. So, it's really, really a lot of commitment to get out of bed every day and stay alive in that sense. And staying alive, I mean that, you know, you see a forest, you go to the forest, yeah? Or at least you try to go to the forest. So I don't blame my wife. A lot of people here, when they watch my videos and stuff, and especially those where I'm like a bit more satirically comic, they think I'm blaming people, and there's no one to blame. I mean, other than people who they already get enough of self-reflection and they still refuse to change their own toxic ways. And not for the sake of others, but just for the sake of themselves. I mean, if you have children, definitely for the children first. So the problem with hurting other people is when this really continues to be a generational trauma projected on the kids and all of that stuff. It's already so hard not to actually repeat some of the stuff that our parents did, or that, some of the stuff that is just not right for the kids. And it could be simple stuff. You are busy with your boss, you have a lot of responsibility on your plate, and you're suddenly getting a phone call and whatnot, and the child is just coming to you and saying, Daddy, look at the picture I drew for you. And you go, no, not now, I don't have time for you. That's gonna leave a scar on the child. That's it. And I bet you, every parent has done something like that at least once in their life. We all make mistakes. We all make mistakes one way or another, with our partners, with our kids, with our parents and parents, like all of this stuff. It's not so easy. And the best part we can all do is, again, like I said, the shame and the blame game is what hurts us all, and hurts if you're, even when you're shaming and blaming someone else, you end up just hurting yourself. So it's pretty much that, I'm not sure if I really wanted to go any further into this and stuff. I mean, feel free, people, if you have any questions you want to ask and stuff. In terms of, I would say, like daily healing, so that we don't talk about now this more extreme stuff like psychedelics and shit like that. Daily healing. Find what really makes you feel good and nice, like physically and mentally. So like good music, good tunes, and it doesn't have to be now necessarily classic music and everything positive. If you feel days when it's like just rage all popping up and heavy metal is the best that comes with it, go for it. Feel what you feel your emotions, let them out in a manner that is good for you and good for others, that it's not. Releasing anger is possible in so many different ways. You go maybe get a boxing bag or something. You can shout in the pillow. You can beat a pillow. You can beat a mattress on the bed. Whatever it is, that's safe. Don't break stuff. Don't yell at people. Don't be aggressive with people. These kind of things. Those are personal boundaries. Set those personal boundaries up and really, really follow them strictly, regardless of what other people are doing. As a man, if you are in an abusive relationship where a woman, because that really happens a lot, women tend to push triggers, push buttons, and keep pushing and pushing. Best thing you can do to protect yourself, if you have kids and the property may be yours or whatever's going on, or it's a shared property, you know that there's going to be a legal issue following this kind of stuff. Maybe it's because of cheating, maybe it's because of her own personality disorder, which was not apparent before. It takes time for things to reveal themselves. Just be smart. Don't tell them what you're doing. Don't give them up your plans. Don't tell them that you're onto them. But do keep documenting. Now we have the technology. Record. You have the right to record. You have the right to record secretly. Not spying on them. Not this kind of stuff that is borderline sick again. But enough to gather that kind of evidence to prove that you are being abused. Same for a woman. Many women nowadays still will also be actual victims of abuse and they will be laughed at. Maybe because they themselves have been considered easygoing for too long. Maybe because they like to drink. Maybe because they use drugs. All this kind of stuff. They won't get the right treatment. Like I said already before, it's not the police don't really give a shit about victims. They only give a damn about prosecuting and numbers. Most of them. The good cops are the ones that will try to look at everything from a perspective, but the good cops don't come in numbers. So, and that's everywhere the same. Well, here in Netherlands, I must say the police are really good, but they're not so necessarily intelligent in all ways. All due respect. And yeah, learning and playing music really helped you. Of course, look, Sahil, art, expression of art has always been really the most healing, and whatever does help you focus, music and stuff like that, or painting, it helps you focus your mind on just one thing at a time and one thing there with you at the here and the now. And that's also a process to learn and teach your brain to not be so hyper alert and hypersensitive all of the stuff. And I'm really happy for you. That's a good way. Classical Indian singing. Oh, that's nice. I like Indian harmonies in the music. They are really beautiful. It's kind of like different harmonies than from most of the classical music and stuff you hear around here in the West. So yeah, the the catch with this like victim shaming and further victimizing the victims is no one else can prevent it and make it better than yourself in that case. You know, that you need to be aware of your own triggers, and if it's hard to get out of the relationship, you may be dependent financially, maybe otherwise. I myself didn't have anywhere to go, and I found myself really trapped because the thought of homelessness was just terrifying. And now I am technically, well, I'm not homeless, I'm on a boat, but this is not exactly still not the standard of living that I want to be in at the moment. Even though I want to stay on boats, it has to be a lot better than this. And what I'm trying to say is like, one is protect yourself with rational means and make sure you are not breaking the law when you have to physically protect yourself so that you don't hurt someone. Always use the amount of force appropriate for the situation. And of course, self defense. But if you think that even homelessness is worse than continue to suffer like that, you are completely wrong. You're 100% totally wrong about it. Everything can change, but the person who refuses to acknowledge their abuse and their behavior as toxic, anything can change. So, homelessness can change, your life can change, you can change, people that you know will change around you, those that you didn't need will fall off, and those that will really help you will be there exactly when you need them the most. So, the most self-sabotaging thing for any victim of abuse and anyone living in traumatic environment right now is thinking that there's nowhere to go. And this is not just for now like Europe or USA and stuff. I mean, sorry guys, for wherever you are, wherever you live, you gotta be creative. Because you have to understand that if you live in a country where abuse is even more rampant. There's a lot of people like yourself. So find those people and start building and creating the spaces. It's gonna be dangerous, it's gonna be always tricky, but somebody has to start. You're the shining light in that world for all the rest of the people who need that kind of help. So it's gotta start with someone. Take every risk that you can in your life to break your own cycle, to break the trauma and get out of it. Because only you can make that decision for you. Not God, not anything else, and no one else in the world can change anything else around you. But what you can do with yourself and when you decide that you're going to finally act. And yeah, that definitely concludes my all of my thoughts and all of my what I wanted to share about trauma, healing, misunderstandings about people who are suffering from trauma. So thanks Starbright for staying with me so long, and thank you Sahil for your wonderful feedback. I mean, and also staying with us. I love that. Sasquatch, thank you as well. Let's see, any more shout outs I didn't do before? Again, shout out to Ronnie Edits or some, yeah, I hope I got that right. Brittany Kenny, shout out. Ramesh, shout out. What is this? Parfit 95. Still didn't get your question. I guess you're gone already. Reckless, shout out. Saturn, shout out. Vasil Dimitrovsky, hi. Sounds like a Bulgarian. Shout out. And that's pretty much it for today. And I think that we had the first one was Sadkan. Shout out as well. So, shout out to all the people that popped on my stream. Those that you stayed for it, even more. Thank you so much. Big love. Everyone watching replay, I hope you enjoyed it. Next one will be, I think, probably about men and women, or maybe about the state of the world. So suppress science, suppress technology, and that actually comes backed up by a really great YouTube channel that I like, and I will put that in descriptions and stuff in the coming live or the video talking about that stuff, because it's really cool. That is another part of waking up from the traumatic system that we have, yeah, the traumatic environment that we live in, all of us as a humanity. So I hope you all enjoyed this, and I hope you will enjoy the next one. Thank you all again, and have a nice rest of the Sunday. Bye bye.